Hi, I'm Dr. Philip McMillan, a physician looking at COVID 19 and the science around COVID 19 since 2020. I had started off focused on the autoimmune characteristics of COVID, and since then, I have maintained a consistent focus on trying to understand every aspect of the pandemic. As part of this journey, we need solutions. And many people have by this time have gotten a negative perception of the pharmaceutical industry. It's all just about money and making as much as they can. Whilst that may be true for shareholders and the pressures on companies, there are many other smaller pharmaceutical companies that are doing the process of just looking at the science and trying to find solutions that can help you. In the mix, they have to be concerned about finance because research is expensive. However, I find it fascinating to understand the kind of journey that they are on and what exactly it is that they are doing. And so I've got with me Richard Lee from Australia today. Richard, do you mind just doing an introduction of yourself for the
Sure,
audience?
sure. Philip, thanks for the opportunity to outline our case. Uh, I originally came from Hong Kong in 1972 and to study, and then I did my accountancy degree, and then went into the investment banking business for the last 40 plus years. Uh, and in early 2020, I was invited by a team of scientists from this company called Covirex Medical to help them to raise capital, to help them structure their business, because they were very much interested in discovering or repurposing an antiviral drug for treatment of COVID. And while they are very good in what they're doing in terms of their scientific professions, they are not that cluey as to how to structure the business. In fact, how to corporatize the whole business. That's where I came in. So I've been working with them now for uh, almost 5 years now, 4.5, 5 years now, to raise capital for them. And we have actually been running a very lean ship, and you might say bootstrapping the company going forward. We raised the capital to finance the virology study, patent application, and all those things. So it's been a long journey. And in between, rather than just focusing on COVID and SARS-CoV-2, we've now broadened the application to other respiratory diseases as well, because the drug itself is actually broad spectrum.
Excellent. So it's important then. I'm going to be coming back to that issue with regards to the pharma challenges with regards to bringing products to market and the risks and the finance that is required. But I was very interested in the fact that you are in Australia. You would have been caught up after the pandemic in the lockdowns, in what happened afterwards. What were your thoughts in terms of how the Australia medical and governmental bodies approached the management of the pandemic and at that time? Any thoughts?
In actual fact, the Australian government, the regulatory agencies, and so on, like TGA and all that, they basically follow the same path, same strategy as most of the other, in particular the Western countries, in terms of having vaccination mandate, in terms of lockdown, and all those solutions, daily briefing. You might say that it's all following the same pattern as what we have seen in the West, actually, particularly in the West. And of course, we all follow the use of the same vaccines, like the mRNA vaccines and the adenovirus vaccines and so on. And but the lockdown in terms of stopping international travel, all those things, and vaccine mandates, is actually very harsh environment that we had to go through, just like you have been going through the same thing in the UK and the US as well, I guess.
One of the interesting things you had said before that I'm trying to capture is that you were one of the people who stood against those kinds of mandates. what made you take a stance? Because you're in the older cohort. Why did you take a stand at that time?
Well, put it this way, uh, for our whole team at Covirex, you might even say that I'm the only one of the team members who chose not to be vaccinated. And I must say that I have to thank you and Gert. I've been reading up a lot and watching a lot of podcasts between you and Gert Vandenbosch, how much risk there is to take the COVID vaccine and the side effects and so on. And that's why I chose not to get vaccinated. So I'm actually that 1% of the Australian population, part of that 1% that have chosen not to be vaccinated. Not that I don't believe in vaccination. It's just that there's been too many problems associated with the COVID vaccines that I had read about and decided not to follow the masses, you might say.
It's an interesting point. I raised it because I'm pivoting back to the challenges that you face in bringing a product to market and the regulatory the hoops that you have to jump through in order to get safety and efficacy. Were you surprised at the speed at which, even though it was emergency use authorization, the speed they were able to get through those regulatory hurdles that would not exist? I mean, that are very difficult for you when you are bringing other products to market.
Well, I'm not surprised about the application of emergency use authorization actually, because at that time in that environment where there's so many people were infected and so many people were dying, in that emergency environment, I believe it is actually correct for the government, the regulators to introduce emergency use authorization, but that doesn't excuse the industry. That doesn't exclude excuse the regulators from having more thorough investigation, more thorough testing before they bring onto the market. But it's the environment, unfortunately. Having said all that, it might say that it could be a blessing in disguise because of what we're doing. I'm looking forward to hopefully, and ironically, if there's another COVID wave coming or another respiratory disease wave coming, hopefully we can also get emergency use authorization.
A very good point. Yes, absolutely right. So let's get back to what it is that you guys are doing. And you are not the science head here. You are
No.
more the finance head. So we'll not go too technical in terms of the science. We'll
Mhm.
look at things quite broadly here. When we think about where things are at the moment, here is my assessment. Everybody has been focused on COVID as severe respiratory disease, causing people to end up in intensive care and dying. But they're not concerned about COVID that circulates as a mild disease. That to me is a huge mistake.
Mm.
Just because it presents initially as a mild disease doesn't mean the manifestations are mild. So when we looked at the Denmark study, they found that if someone was admitted within 14 days and had a COVID infection, I didn't say they were admitted for severe COVID, they
Mhm.
just had a positive PCR.
Yes.
Okay. Within 30 days of admission, 12% had died, not from COVID respiratory related. Could have been anything. Vascular, three times more than what happens with influenza. So this
Mhm.
influenza is a bar. COVID has three times higher mortality within 30 days, which suggests it could be, maybe 20% in 3 months and 25 to 30% in 6 months. And so there is a huge underestimation as to what happens around COVID because the initial manifestations are still mild.
Mhm.
That's why I think we need more solutions. So tell us a little bit more about what is it that you guys are trying to achieve with this product? Is it a tablet? Is it an injection? What is it?
Okay, amongst our team members, we have a gentleman by the name of Dr. Simon Tucker, who was the some 20 odd years ago. I don't know whether you recall, there was a company called Biota, which actually discovered, Relenza, and Relenza was, I mean, it's also a oral inhalation drug, and that's why our team, when we started looking into COVID therapeutics, we straight away decided it should be an oral inhalation drug because that's then it's more targeted. Because after all, SARS-CoV-2 attacks the airway and the respiratory tract. So why not have a drug that is orally inhaled to attack where the virus is going to infect you and further down the respiratory tract. So right at the beginning, we decided to have the drug, which is a repurposed antiviral, for DPI, dry powder inhalation treatment, and that's how we started actually. And now, having started that way, we then decided, there's a lot of formulation work, and then we have to work together with inhaler providers as well. We've spoken to a number of inhaler provider technologies companies as well. It's been a long journey, I have to say. But having said all that, as a financier, as an investment banker behind the company, in terms of the investment available to finance our activities, it hasn't been easy to find, and because there's so much focus on vaccination. If you talk about antiviral, people tend to think that, well, we have already got vaccine. Why do we need antiviral? But it's the problem that you were relating to. I believe that had there been a bit more emphasis on antiviral, it may well be that the COVID problem might not be as serious as we have experienced actually over the past few years.
I think that's a valid point. The counter argument that would come is that it's not so much that there was not a focus on antivirals. It's just that the focus that they had with Paxlovid, with remdesivir, with Moderna, I think molnupiravir, another
Mhm.
one, none of them have been particularly effective in terms of making a huge difference. And the part of the challenge, so I'm going to put to you what I think the challenge is going to be. Part of the problem is that the use of antivirals are very often when people are having symptoms, not mild symptoms, but severe symptoms. So that's when they get into hospital. But because this virus has this two-phased presentation, where there's the viral phase, which can very often be mild or asymptomatic, and then an immune phase. And in the immune phase, if you use an antiviral, it's not going to help.
Mm.
And this is part of the problem, is that at the moment, so many people are underestimating mild infection. That's when they need the antiviral, not when they have more severe symptoms. And so part of the repurposing and the approach, I think, with an antiviral is that they need to be brought in either as a prophylactic or even as the pre-exposure. If you're, say, going to be traveling and you
Mm.
know you're going to be in a high exposure environment, you need to use this for a couple of days. Or if you've just traveled, and it's that kind of very early intervention with antivirals that will make a difference. But that's hard to sell because people usually only take stuff when they're sick.
Well, I like to add two more points as a result of what you just mentioned. First of all, our repurposed antiviral, is an inhibitor of a certain protein, which the virus actually need to make use of before it can replicate. So without that protein on the surface of the host cells, the virus cannot replicate and will naturally die. Secondly, is that because we are doing dry powder inhalation, it has a certain prophylactic use as well. Say if you're traveling on the plane and you worry about 50%. I might get a 50% chance of being infected. You'll be safe to actually take a few puffs of our DPI drug into your airway, so that if the virus does hit your airway, it's killed anyway. Okay, so it has both the application to treat the disease, as well as having preventive use as well.
That is a very, very important point. And actually, I'm thinking about now, I've got loads of pictures, slides that I've made, and I wanted to capture just some of the basics. As I said, this is not a technical discussion. This is more about how this actually works. I'm going to be showing you a slide in just a minute, because I think that the capturing of how this actually works, because this drug, remind me the name of the drug again.
We just simply code name is CVX 20733, and lately we also tested another compound which is a bit more potent, CVX 20700 actually.
And it's a repurposed drug, meaning that it is already off patent.
Yes,
And so but the product that you make will still be patented.
yes, we have got the Australian patent already, specifically for treating pulmonary diseases.
Okay, so here is what, just again, very basic understanding. I'm just going to share with you my screen, and I'm capturing what I think is an important thing to do about it. Is here we have a viral RNA viral entry
Mhm.
and exit. This is from one of my presentations,
Right.
and it seems that once the virus gets in and it has released its RNA, then
Hmm.
it starts replicating. Then it goes through the process of rebuilding the virus here using all of these proteins that it has
Yes.
translated. And it seems that your drug, because in order for the virus to rebuild it, it needs to use some of the cell's proteins
Yes.
to build the
One of the
virus,
proteins.
one of the proteins. So it's at this phase that your drug will work, and
Yes.
it's not actually directly inhibiting, it's not attacking the virus, it's
No.
just preventing the virus from getting access to a tool
Yep.
that the virus needs to replicate.
Correct. Correct.
It's almost like, I'm trying to think of an analogy here, it's kind of like the bank robbers are trying to get in the vault, they've broken in the bank. But in order for them to get down into the vault and to open it, they need electricity.
Yes.
But they don't make the electricity, and you, by your drug, have switched off all the lights, so they can't use the electricity to open the vault. Is it that kind
Well,
of
you might say
analogy?
that in another analogy I might put up is that the robber will need to have a number of passwords in order to get through the door, and because we've taken one of the passwords away, they cannot get through the door.
Hmm. So it is taking advantage. So this is where it's different, because most of the other antivirals were targeting the viral enzymes
Yeah.
that make their proteins and so on. In this case, you have targeted the cell and the fact that the virus needs specific things from the
Yes.
cell, and therefore inhibits it and allows the immune system to do the heavy lifting. Yeah, that is quite, and so the thing about it is that this principle works for many other viruses.
Correct. And that's the
So you're
reason
not
why.
just,
That's the reason
mhm,
why
yes, go.
we've
Mhm.
decided, because it's a broad spectrum drug. That's the reason why we've decided to also test it against a number of other viruses, including two influenza A viruses, the RSV virus, as well as recently the avian flu virus as well. And our virology study conducted in an American university was actually successful. Actually, we're quite pleased about that.
And so let me just clarify something here. So you have already got this product, an inhalation product that works for COVID, or is that still in testing phase?
We've done only in vitro testing. We are now embarking on animal study, and
Mm.
most likely that will be done in Hong Kong at the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park. I was actually visiting Hong Kong back in April and had a good meeting with them, followed up by a number of meetings as well. And then if we're successful on the animal study, which we are quite confident of for efficacy and safety, we will then be following that up with a human clinical trial at the Hong Kong University Clinical Trial Center.
Excellent. So, in the reality, and this is now where it helps people to understand the challenges that exist in the industry, from going for a product, animal studies, to then actually getting it to market, how many more steps do you have to take?
Okay, because we are a repurposed drug, and in fact, the primary drug candidate 20733 is already fully FDA approved. So effectively, it is actually you might say safe for human use anyway. But then the existing drug is actually orally taken, not an inhaled drug. So what we have to do is to do respiratory toxicology under the animal model. So it's actually much quicker to do repurpose drug than having a drug developed from scratch, actually. So in terms of timing, we believe the animal study for respiratory toxicology study would probably take 3 to 6 months, and then thereafter to go into phase 1, 2 trial at the Hong Kong University Clinical Trial Center. Now, hopefully, emergency use approval will be available for us, or if not, IND approval, investigation new drug approval. These are the approval processes that will be available to us. We hope.
So so therefore you could be right at the brink as to be able to bring a product to market that is broad antiviral.
Yes.
And there, because the other part of the puzzle that I think people kept on missing was that two things happened. One, because COVID is milder in terms of its initial symptoms, it's now underestimated. But what they fail to seem to remember is that the primary mechanism as to why SARS-CoV-2 was so problematic, both in spread and in terms of severe disease, was interferon suppression.
Mm-hmm.
So it would suppress the immune system response. And this is why it was able to spread so quickly without any symptoms, and also to evade the immune system to get to the lungs. But here is the issue. Because it leaves longer term suppression of interferon, that opens the gate for other viruses.
Yes.
And so, what many people don't connect is that very often, from a clinical point of view, I will see someone come in with a co infection. So, they may have respiratory, like an influenza and an RSV. If you see that, it suggests that they probably had COVID before, which suppressed their immune system and therefore causes and opens the doors to other respiratory viruses. This is why I'm saying that having a tool like this, where you can almost support the immune system, because it can't get rid of the virus, it just delays the capability of the virus to replicate, with the hope that the immune system does the heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm. Not just that, Philip. You didn't mention in those chain of viruses avian flu virus as well. I am actually very concerned that after again reading up a lot about what's happening to the avian flu pandemic for the bird population, the mammalian population, even now domestic pets population, and of course there have already been cases of human infection as well anyway, which I believe is underreported. But what's even more concerning is that if there is actually a reassortment process going through whereby the avian flu is mixed in with the seasonal flu virus, then we will have a more infectious and very deadly kind of virus. So even though we started with COVID and SARS-CoV-2, because we've now done deliberately done the testing against these other viruses as well, with the concern in mind about the reassortment process. Uh, Fortunately, we have been successful in our in vitro study, and so we are looking forward to the next phase of our development for the respiratory toxicology and the clinical trial as well, so that we're not just tackling COVID, which is still in the system, but also the other problems which may or hopefully not, but at least we have to be prepared for this, the avian flu, reassortment with other viruses as well.
And so when you think about your product and the characteristics of it, who are your major competitors? Is there anyone else in this space who has a similar type of product to what it is that you are trying to do?
I'm sure there are a whole lot of clever people, discovering, repurposing, developing all kinds of solutions, uh, just like what we have been doing as well. Uh, but historically, I've not read about any particular antiviral that could what I regard as a silver bullet against so many respiratory viruses as well. So I think that we have actually been very fortunate that our drug is broad spectrum, and we have been able to tackle a number of viruses successfully in the in vitro study. But as I said, I'm not aware of any other therapeutic solutions. But they may well be doing it from another angle, but that I'm not aware of.
Excellent. So listen, as we come to the close here, Richard, I want you first, just in case someone is watching, coming on late, I want you first to summarize. I will summarize what I think I understand, and you tell me what I've left out. You guys have found an antiviral that has already been patented, tested, known to be safe, and used 20 years ago. What was the name of that drug again?
Relenza.
Relenza. This had broad use against viruses. So your company then steps in with the use of this drug, which is already off patent.
No. Philip, I have to correct you. We are not repurposing Relenza. We are repurposing another antiviral,
Yes.
which has been used for an autoimmune disease, and we have done sufficient testing, firstly with SARS-CoV-2, and then with the other four respiratory viruses, and found that the in vitro testing success. But it's not Relenza. The reason why I mentioned Relenza was because one of our team member, our chief virologist, Simon Tucker, he was the head of R&D at Biota that
I
discovered
see.
Relenza.
That's a good correction because somehow it stuck in my head. Yes.
Sorry
So
about that.
then, yes. So you've got then a product that has already been through the testing and use in terms of as an oral preparation.
Yes,
And what you guys
for
are
an
trying to
autoimmune disease.
for autoimmune disease. And what you guys are trying to do now is you're taking the same formulation and putting it in an inhalation
Yes,
strategy. You
yes,
then have to do the toxicology to make sure that the drug is not toxic directly to the lungs as an inhaler. And
yes,
if that is shown to be safe, then you have got an inhaled antiviral, which is broad spectrum against multiple viruses by targeting a specific host required protein or protein system that the
yes,
virus requires to replicate itself. Is that
yes,
about right?
yes, correct. And that protein inhibition applies not just to SARS-CoV-2, but the other respiratory viruses as well.
Well, this is tremendous. So, yes, thank you very much, Richard. And what I think I want you all to be aware of as my listeners is that when it comes to looking for solutions, we all have to be open to every single angle. I don't want anybody to label the pharmaceutical industry as a negative thing. The industry has brought tremendous value to the health of the world. What I think happens sometimes, and as a final close to the end, I want you to clarify this thought that I have, Richard. For many big companies that are doing things that are driving the finance of the company, very often this is being driven by shareholders and not actually the company. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Um, I don't want to say that we are not looking after shareholder interests. Indeed, we are looking after shareholder interests. But if we introduce a drug which is not going to be successful, it's not going to be effective, the primary objective is to introduce a drug that can actually help to save humanity. And if we can achieve that, then our shareholder will be very happy.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think that that is the model and the standard that we have to remember as being the basis for what made the pharmaceutical industry. It was genuinely looking for solutions to help people
Yes.
in a way that was ethical and directed and focused. So this is what I mean is such an important aspect to hear from someone who is in the industry for the public to hear. As a final takeaway, Richard, what is your vision for your company and what you are doing as a final thought to the listeners?
Our objective has never deviated right from the beginning, and that is to find a therapeutic solution to make sure that we can treat COVID. And it's as I said before, because it's a broad spectrum drug. Fortunately, we can now also apply the same product to treating other respiratory viruses as well. And thank God we believe we have found that. So as a final thought, I have to say that whether it is COVID or whether it is seasonal flu, whether it is avian flu, the world just have to learn to live with these viruses. They're going to come back again and again, and we just need to have a therapeutic solution that is more effective, as well as having the preventive effect as well in moving forward. Hopefully, we can introduce the drug into the market for commercial purposes, within the next 18 months or so.
Wonderful. I wish you all the success, Richard. And just so that people are aware, I'm in no way connected with this company. I have no benefits. This is just a conversation that we have about the science. Have a great evening, and I'll ask you to wait with me, Richard, until after the outro.
Thanks, Philip.